Too hot for TV.
Welcome back to Doctor Who Too Hot for TV. We are the podcast that looks at all things Doctor Who Extended Universe. Today, I'm joined by a brand new guest for this podcast, but I'm sure it's a voice that many people will recognise. It's Geoff from Who Corner to Corner. Geoff, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm wonderful. It's fantastic to have you here. Now, I sort of put the call out to you. We'd not really spoken before, or maybe we tweeted each other from time to time. I don't know.
Yeah.
I put the call out because I know you're a fan of the 13th Doctor, and I thought it was time to show some 13th Doctor love on this podcast. So I'm very glad you could come and join me to talk about the extended universe of the 13th Doctor.
Yeah, well, I appreciate being asked, and to be honest, if a request like that comes in, I'm there. You left to hold me back from joining in. I think really.
Amazing. Well, before we jump into it, what I would like to do is learn a bit about you. So first of all, I want to know when you became a Doctor Who fan.
Well, it was during Sylvester McCoy's time, when that was originally broadcast. I can remember watching, Silver Nemesis and seeing the Cybermen, and I have quite a strong memory of being at my gran and granddad's place in Cornwall where they lived and wanting to go and watch Doctor Who on the telly that they had, and my dad saying, "No, we're here to see gran and granddad," and my gran saying, "Oh, let him watch, dear," and going and watching. And in my head, I can remember that it was the last episode of Survival. When you have a memory or something, I've never bothered to look up what the kind of transmission bumpers were, whether it said, that was the last ever episode or anything like that, because in my head, I knew that was the last one. I came away from it going, oh, that's a shame. So there must have been something that told me that. But, I really just enjoyed the show, enormously. And I have memories as well of seeing Peter Davison and Tom Baker as well. And there must have been reruns, I think, at some point, and I saw bits and pieces of that. So at that time, it was something that, I enjoyed quite a lot. And then obviously the show was cancelled, and it just sort of disappeared. And Paul, my co-host on the podcast, we've talked about this before, because he was really into Target novels and the Virgin books and stuff. I had no idea about any of that. And, this was obviously pre-internet days, so it was much harder to be in circles and of people of a similar mindset and things. And then when it came back with Paul McGann, I thought, oh, that's great. Let's check that out again. Really enjoyed it, got excited about it. And then, of course, nothing else happened. And then a few years went by again, and it came back again with Christopher Eccleston. Thought, oh, well, give this another go. It's brilliant. Unfortunately, it stayed around that time. It's always been something, that's been there. And it's funny to think New Who is now 20 years old. And so it's been almost half my life. I've been watching it, and obviously before that with McGann and the classic era. So it's kind of bonkers to think that it's been around for that long. Yeah,
20 years, and I mean, there's been 7 Doctors now, the big ones, plus 2. We've got Joe Martin and John Hurt as well.
Yeah, so bonus. Yeah.
So they've not done too badly over the sort of
no, not
14
at all,
odd seasons and 20 odd years. And so, what's your relationship like with spin-off media? Do you have one? I guess.
Yeah. Well, once, like I said, I kind of knew nothing about Target books or anything like that, and when the show came back again, I didn't really know anything about any books or anything like that. It just somehow all bypassed me completely. But I was up in Leicester seeing my cousin for a few days, and we went into town and went into a bookshop, and they had some of the Ninth Doctor and Rose novels, and I thought, I'm going to pick one of those up, and it was the Stealers of Dreams, I think. And I read it in like a weekend, and this is great. I loved it. And then, you start to kind of investigate a bit more. Oh, there's a couple more books, and then obviously Tennant turned up and more books. So I started reading all of those. They're doing 3 books a series and stuff, and then over time the Titan comics and getting into DWM as well, and then Big Finish, discovering that, and oh god, there's tons more. Like, what other show has stuff like this? So yeah, the kind of extended universe stuff is something that I enjoy, and it's enormous, like I said, and kind of hard to keep on top of it all. But the things that if a book synopsis comes out and it appeals, I'll get it. I won't just buy everything, but I'll get the things that really appeal. And the same with the Big Finish stuff. I have a couple of Doctors and series that they do that I'll always get, but then there'll be other things to think, oh yeah, this sounds good, so let's check that out as well.
Brilliant. And so what about but I think anybody that's heard your podcast will know that you are not a Not My Doctor. It's fair to say you have a great deal of time and affection for the 13th Doctor's era.
Yes, I would say that's probably an understatement. Yeah, yeah. And I can admit that I have a problem there with it. Yeah, it's a big part of our podcast, and I think when Jody was revealed as the Doctor, so I'm sure we remember that video where she pulled the hood back and stuff. I'd heard all the rumours, and I thought, oh, this is cool, and it just immediately felt different, and which it obviously was, but just in more than it just being a female Doctor, it felt different and new.
Yeah,
and it's funny because I really loved the Capaldi era, and particularly his seasons with Clara. Clara's one of my favourite companions, but it was quite dark and it was quite grown up in a lot of ways. And when Jodie came in, it was just this sort of blast of fresh air and colour and hope and optimism, and it just sort of really clicked with me. And I've said before that I always loved Doctor Who, but I never loved the show as much as I did when Jodie appeared. And you mentioned Not My Doctor there. Obviously, some fans were, let's just say, unhappy that we had a female Doctor and made it their entire personalities online. and I chose to make mine, well, sort of didn't choose necessarily, but inadvertently made mine the opposite, because I thought, I get it, we don't all like the same things, and that's just part of life. But, when there's excessive and unnecessary criticism and making stuff up and things, I find that I found myself unable to stand back and let something I loved so much be trashed in ways that I felt was unnecessary and untruthful a lot of the time. So yeah, that's kind of what I ended up doing. Like, I just thought it was just absolutely wonderful, and I loved it all.
So for me, Jodie was the Doctor from the moment she fell through that roof of the train. I didn't love Series 11 on broadcast as much as I love it now, but it was Series 12 that really sold it to me. And once I got into 12, I was very much into the whole era. And I think it was, I didn't realise at the time, but it's a bit of a U-turn and a change of pace and a shift of style and tone, as a new Doctor and a new showrunner should be. And I think it took me a little while to get used to that. Having said that, there were stories like It Takes You Away that I adored on The Witchfinders, things like that I adored on first broadcast, and I really liked the first episode. But I felt at the time there was a little lull in the middle, but I've since gone back to reevaluate that. I think that the moment for me where I really twigged that this is my favourite era of the show, but I really twigged was after Orphan 55 finished, and I thought, God, that was brilliant.
Yes.
Nobody who likes classic Doctor Who can possibly say that was a terrible bit of television, and went online and was like, oh, it's committed a hate crime.
And the same with Saranga Conundrum as well. Worst episode ever. And I saw stuff like that, and I'd end up thinking, well, what's wrong with me? Why have I missed something here? And we actually just rewatched, in fact, we've done a few episodes about Orphan 55 on our podcast because it's bloody brilliant. For me, it takes Aliens, the James Cameron film, another one of my big loves, Doctor Who, mashes them together, chucks a bit of the Truman Show into it, throws Benny in, and just, chucks it out. And how can you not love that and enjoy it? Like I said, we don't all like the same things. That's true. That's life. But I find it hard to believe that as a fan of something, you could watch a season, an episode, whatever, and not like something in it and not enjoy it. So when people say, I hated all of season 11, I can't get my head around it when you've got brilliance all the way through for me, but, It Takes You Away or Rosa and, so much of it, so yeah, something I just couldn't understand really.
I wonder whether, and I think I felt this a little at the time, and again, sort of revised my thinking. Perhaps because it didn't have the sort of series finale that people were used to, and for years people have said they want a slightly lower stakes season finale,
and then they get it,
yeah, and they're like, not like that. But it's a different sort of finale. It's the character arcs and things like that. It's Graham and it's Ryan and it's the Doctor and it's like those relationships and them dealing with the grief and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's how it's played out. So those are the important things, not the 20,000 Daleks invading the Earth or something like that.
I think you're right. I think some most people kind of expect and want certain things from something, whether it's Doctor Who or Marvel films or, whatever it might be. And then it doesn't go that way. And there's a disappointment, a frustration, an anger, whatever. And, I get it. And I think certainly with Series 11, like you said, it was so different. New composer, new Doctor, new showrunner, new feel, the whole thing, as it should be. We had a very similar feeling show for a long time prior to it. And that's not a bad thing, but real mix-up. And that was one of the things that I liked about it. It was so fresh and so vibrant. And I think Chris Chibnall was admitted that Ranskorav Kolos was a semi-rushed first draft and, he wished he'd had more time and that's the thing, he'd go back and redo if he could. But I think you're completely right, Dylan. It wasn't about whiz bang and spaceships and blah blah blah. It was about these people and these characters, and that was one of the other things for the whole era, was that it was really human. Everyone was like us. They weren't, the most special person in the universe or the person that time and creation revolve around or any of that stuff, which is great in a kind of larger than life thing. But this was so nice to be able to see people like Graham, think, he's like my dad, or him and Ryan when Ryan finally calls him granddad. What a beautiful conclusion to that arc between them.
And the style of music, the style of acting is all suddenly more naturalistic. It's not the Joker minute thing of the Moffat era, which worked very well in that era. It's not big bombastic scores. All of a sudden, it's a sci-fi adventure drama, but it's sort of trying to ground it a little bit more in the real world. I think that came to a shock. Having said that, if Doctor Who didn't come back in 2005 and came back in 2018 with Series 11, I guarantee everybody would say it was the most fresh, exciting drama and reinvention they'd ever seen.
I think you're probably right. People they get used to things, don't they? And big changes are a shock to the system in a way. I see it in comics. A run takes place for years with so-and-so writing it, and then a new writer comes on and suddenly it's the worst thing ever.
Yeah. Because
they've come in and they want to make their mark on it because they're the one in charge at that point. And I think that's absolutely fair enough that you want to, when you get given that sandbox, you're going to make it yours. And I think that's, Moffat was a sort of somewhat evolution from RTD's first era, and Chibnall was a total kind of revamp of it all. With Series 11, I liked that there was no recurring monsters. It was all new. And then I kind of see, Resolution as the, it's the finale in a sort of unofficial way.
Yeah.
But after Ranskorav and then getting, I've watched Resolution more times than I can count. Absolutely superb. And they made us wait for the Dalek, and it turned up and it was an absolute bastard, and it was brilliant. And the confrontation with Jody and the Doctor, do you know what I mean? Like, if that had happened in episode 2 or 3, cool, great. But we were made to wait for it. And I thought that was brilliant.
It's the Casino Royale approach, isn't it? Of not throwing it all at episodes 1 and 2 sort of thing and going, no, we're gonna get to all the things you recognise eventually, even the TARDIS not being until episode 2, things like that. It's going, it's an in. You can jump into that show completely fresh.
And it was drip feeding enough, throughout, a bit like when it started with Eccleston again, you didn't find out about Gallifrey much, straight away, and it took a while. And I loved that we had The Woman Who Fell to Earth, no title sequence, no music. What's it going to be like? Find out next week. There's no TARDIS. Well, we find that out next week, and kept you going like that. And, just as an aside, the TARDIS reveal in the Ghost Monument is, for me, the single best scene in all of Doctor Who. I think it's absolutely beautifully done. I sat there going, just crying with joy at how wonderful it was.
Love that. There are many points in that series or over those 3 years that I feel like that, and it is the era I revisit the most in the entire show. And I wasn't ready for it to be over, and I'm still not over that it's over.
And do you feel the same as me, Dylan, when the Big Finish announcement came out about Jodie and Mandip joining? You thought, thank God.
No, I was very excited. It's the first Big Finish that I've pre-ordered the CD version of for a long time, because I want a physical copy. And I can't wait
to have it for the collection.
Yeah, exactly. Other things, I'm happy with the download. It'll sit on my phone. It'll sit on a hard drive. It'll always be on the app. But I need to hold it in my hands.
Yes, same. Yeah.
Excellent. Very much looking forward to that, and fingers crossed that it's an absolute doozy of a range.
Yeah, really excited for it.
Too hot for TV.
So let's jump into the first thing we're going to cover today. We sort of had a chat backwards and forwards because, to my shame, as much as I love the era, I've never really experienced anything beyond the television show of it. And I think that's because the podcast people generally come on and want to talk about things that happen in the wilderness years and stuff like that, or very niche things. That's my era, and I'm very happy to cover it. But we don't do a lot of new series stuff on here. There's been a few, and we, as part of like a Moffat sort of spin-off-y thing, we did Terror of the Umpty-Ums, the 13th Doctor story that Stephen Moffat wrote. But this is the first time I've really jumped into that era. So you were the expert here. But I had a look around at what was available, and the first thing we decided to cover was Old Friends, which came from Titan Comics and was released on the 4th of December 2019, written by Jody Houser with art by Roberta Ingranata. And colorist is Enrica Angeloni. So this is fairly early on in Jodie's run. So the news at the time is we have Series 12 was going to begin broadcasting on New Year's Day. And every classic story would be released on BritBox. What I like about that period is, as I said, I didn't love 11 when it went out, but I was still on board. And going into Spyfall, well, two things. Resolution had absolutely won me over, and then going into Spyfall and just being going, oh my god, this is so much fun, this is great, and then the cliffhanger, and then I think from that point, I am there for this, and every week I was like, I have to tune in live to watch that series.
Brilliant.
And by the time we get to Flux, I'm an addict.
I mean, some of the absolute best Who cliffhangers across this era. Spyfall one, mind blowing. For me, the Village of the Angels one is the best ever. And when we recorded our podcast review after that, I was like shouting down the call to Paul, oh my God, I can't believe what they did. But, that's what we want from the show at times, and it gives everyone talking. And sometimes people go, the resolution wasn't amazing. Do you know what? Who cares?
They very rarely are.
Absolutely. And when you get that level of excitement over something, you can build it up, and whatever comes out of it afterwards is unlikely to meet what you kind of hope will happen. But it kind of doesn't bother me because the build up to it is so good.
I remember when the Empty Child and Dr. Dances went out and the resolution was go to your room, and everyone thought, oh my God, what an amazing way to do a cliffhanger. I guarantee you, if that hadn't happened and it was done now, people would go, that was the worst cliffhanger resolution ever.
Yeah, they would. And I remember that and thinking, oh my God, how is he going to get out of this? This is terrifying. And then, go to your room. Absolutely hilarious, because it pulls the rug out from under you. You're not expecting that to happen. It was superb. I was just going to say that, as you probably discovered, there's really, sadly, very little in the way of kind of, expanded stuff for 13's era. Series 11 had 3 books come out, but that was it. There was no other, trio of novels like the other series had. And then there was the Titan comics, and then a couple of books that were sort of semi-aimed at kids and teens, like The Secret of Maze 13 or Vault 13 and the Maze of Doom, which were brilliant. They were really good. So there's been very little extra stuff. If you sat down, you'd probably be able to do it in a weekend, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's all great. It's all really good. But yes, there's not much of it.
It's starting to grow a bit now.
Yes, there was the book, the Wizard of Oz, Italian. They've been doing the Doctor Meets classic, novel stuff. And there was the Frida Kahlo book recently, which was really good as well. So yeah, there's and At Childhood's End, which Sophie Aldred wrote, was superb. So yeah, there is stuff, and like I said, it's all great, but there's not much, unfortunately.
We want more.
We do, yeah.
There was, of course, a lot of Doctor Who spin-off material out at the time of Old Friends. So from Big Finish, we had Blood on Santa's Claw and Other Stories. That's great.
I love that one, yeah.
We had A Song for Running, which was a 12th Doctor short trip. The Robots Volume 1, Anti-Genesis, which was the War Master, Torchwood Expectant, Peace in Our Time, featuring Stephen and the First Doctor, and The Best Laid Plans, featuring the 12th Doctor. So there was a lot of Doctor Who spin-offery, even if it wasn't from the 13th Doctor. 13th Doctor wise, there was something called Star Tales, which I think was a bunch of short stories featuring the 13th Doctor that was out the same month.
Yes, that's right. And I've read the book, and I don't think it was her in all of them. Right. So the Doctor meets like Audrey Hepburn, I think Elvis maybe, right. Various kind of celebs, I think Houdini maybe. And it was a lot of fun, that kind of celebrity, right. Historical type of thing.
Too hot for TV.
Accused of a crime they didn't commit, the Doctor and the fam flee to find the two-hearted perpetrator of the crime, which turns out to be the Corsair. They join forces with the Corsair to steal and return a star whale to the Corsair's benefactor, who turns out to be the Doctor's old enemy, the Hoarder, a collector of treasures throughout time, who the Doctor lures into a trap and hands over to the Time Agency.
Too hot for TV.
But the Titan series, to be honest, the whole thing, I mean, all of the Titan stuff's been really good. But 13's one was great. Sadly, cut short on a cliffhanger, ironically, which has yet to be resolved. But having spoken to Jonathan, who's the editor of the range now, he did say if people were to email in and politely demand if the interest was there, they'd consider being able to kind of carry it on. So any other fans who want more should get on that. But Old Friends was a lot of fun, wasn't it? It was a kind of piratey, swashbuckling, heist jobbing kind of
Star Warsy. Like the worlds that they visit are very sort of, it's that extended media thing that they always do and go, we're going to go big because we can't do it on the telly. And so every world feels like it could be something out of Star Wars in terms of like the vista you presented.
Yeah, and that was one. Same with DWM's comics. There's no budgetary restraints, is there? And so they can just go as big and wild and mad and colourful as they want with it. And they certainly did that in the Titan series.
First of all, have you read this before?
I've read it probably. I would have read it when it first came out, monthly, and I think it's 4 issues, and then I bought the collection when it came out, and then when you first got in touch about joining you, I thought, oh, I better go and reread that one then, hadn't I? Which, felt like a massive chore to, go and get that out again. And subsequently, I've then taken a couple of my other Titan 13 books out to reread again. So yes, I've read it a number of times over the years. I think it, exactly like we're kind of saying there, it's just a rollicking good kind of space adventure, this one, and features the old friend who the Doctor is called to go and see. You initially think it's going to be Missy, and that's kind of how it's all played. But it turns out to be the Corsair, who is, in this incarnation, a female Time Lord, very kind of piratey. I think she's got a sword and everything, hasn't she? Yeah. And she looks like she stepped out of, Pirates of the Caribbean. And the Corsair, if you remember, was mentioned in the 11th Doctor story, The Doctor's Wife, where there was a illuminated cube with a kind of snake tattoo illustration on it, which I think the Doctor says it was from the Corsair, etc., etc. So then in this story, 13 is meeting Corsair in an earlier point of her timeline, and so the Doctor knows that she'll eventually die and what happened there and things. And I think we see the snake tattoo on her arm at one point as well. And
the snake tattoo is seen in the Doctor's Wife on the like her arm is on one of the house creatures.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because the Doctor, there's something in Old Friends that sort of implies that it was a pretty yucky end, but I couldn't remember what it was. But you're exactly right. Yes, the arm is part of the sort of Frankenstein-y mashup, isn't it?
What I like about the use of the Corsair is that it's a rollicking adventure. Like, it doesn't go too deep into anybody's character or psyche, but it does take, the Doctor does have these little moments sort of halfway through and then at the end, just to sort of give pause for thought of who the Corsair is and knowing the Corsair's fate and sort of going, you need to find someone to travel with. Don't let me be the only one to remember you. And I thought that was like, it's those lovely little flourishes that really sort of remind me of the era where, again, it's not these big bombastic speeches or these big emotional moments underpinned by huge scores. It's quiet little moments like that make me love the era, and it's captured perfectly here.
Yes. Yeah, Jody Houser, all of her work was just superb on it. She really got the voice of the characters and the sort of tone of the whole era. But with bits like that you mentioned, just absolutely spot on for it. And the Corsair, I kind of saw her as a bit of a kind of opposite of the Doctor. In a way, loving adventure, but it's all very reckless and kind of dangerous and traveling alone. And, the Doctor has friends to kind of keep her on track in a way and somewhat look out for her, whereas the Corsair hasn't got that. And like you said, the Doctor said, try not to sort of give too much away to her. This is what's going to happen. Try to make the most of the time you've got, sort of thing. So I really enjoyed the relationship between them, and there's sort of hints of past adventures, like they got drunk one night and the Doctor woke up in a bank vault or something, and they end up in a similar situation here. And because the sort of crux of the story is the Doctor is arrested for a crime that she didn't commit, and that they have arrested her on the basis of two hearts which the perpetrator had. So that's why she thinks that must be Missy, blah, 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 and find out the Corsair. And the Corsair has been hired by someone named, you don't know initially, but it turns out to be the Hoarder, which is an alien sort of bling gangster type character who loves gold, basically, didn't he? Who was in the first arc of 13's series.
Right.
And he has hired the Corsair to go and steal something, which it turns out to be a space whale. And now I felt like Corsair had a kind of slight change of heart and didn't want to see this, captured. So there's a bit of a twist, isn't there? The Doctor and the fam are kind of drawn along in this. They don't really want to be, but then they find out actually she wants to break it out.
I think that the Corsair's character is sort of opportunistic and is getting wrapped up in the adventure, but I don't think she's like a bad person. You know, I feel like when somebody else looks into the situation from the outside, i.e., her friend the Doctor, she goes, "Oh no, actually, I've got too caught up in something, and I'm not doing the right thing here." But she possibly would have come to that conclusion by herself anyway. Just probably take a little bit longer to get there.
Yeah. I think you're right, and there was obvious sort of parallels with Missy, and this like red herring, and that's who it was going to be. But I felt that she was a character that was more innately good, but had to sort of got caught up in things and had to kind of remember, this is wrong. I need to change path here. Whereas the Master of Missy, mostly there's none of that. Missy did try and kind of redeem herself and sort of somewhat got there. But the Corsair was, quite a rich character, I thought. And it was a shame that there was no more with her in the series, but the cliffhanger at the end of the last comic is she turns up again,
Right.
and to see the Doctor. And it's just a one-page splash with the Corsair, I think standing at a bar or something. Yeah. So, I've spoken to various people over the years, and, everyone says, when is it going to get resolved? What was supposed to happen next? So maybe one day.
Do you know why it didn't happen?
I tried to find out when we talked to Jonathan, the editor, on the podcast, and I think it was possibly to do with kind of changes internally at the BBC a little bit, maybe sales, I think, because they were doing the 10th Doctor had a monthly, 11 had a monthly, 12 had a monthly, then there was mini-series with 3 and 4 and 8 and the 7, I think, and it was perhaps just, I remember thinking, God, there's a lot to get here, and it may well be that they just thought we're putting out too much, and so they scaled it back a little bit, and so, subsequently, since then, there's been like the Fugitive Doctor mini-series, and 15 had a mini-series, and he's got some more coming. So they've kind of scaled it all right back a bit. But there might have been something within the show team themselves, because we spoke to one of the authors of one of the recent Target books for Shooty, and she said there was plans at one point to do do you remember Time Lord Victorious?
Yeah.
Remember that? There was plans to do similar with 13, and they got so far into kind of development on it, but it didn't happen because they wanted to keep the show's adventures kind of on their own, and because there was a lot that was so kind of close together, for example, the end of Can You Hear Me leads them, directly into Villa Diodati and stuff. I think they decided they didn't want anything extra, kind of around it all. So that's just my kind of inference on it all, but I think that's kind of possibly why there wasn't as much, extra stuff around it all. I don't think it was, as some corners would say, no one bought any of it. I don't believe that to be true for a moment.
No, I think also the merch side of things has just been winding down for years, not just with Doctor Who, but with a lot of franchises. People just don't invest in those sort of things the way that they used to. Weirdly, people are more into, and I think we're probably seeing this a little bit now with the 13th Doctor era. Once something's done, they get strangely nostalgic about it, and then start trying to pick up things from that time or that are related to that time.
I've seen how much 13's TARDIS is going for on eBay, for example.
Yeah.
But, we're good friends on the podcast with Al Dewar from Character Options, does the Who range, and, the entire toy market is not what it was years ago. TV is not what it was years ago. When Tennant was on air, we were far more limited in our options for what we could watch. Now we've got 100 million Sky channels. Streaming is infinite. We've got gaming, YouTube, phones, all of this. Do you know what I mean? There's so many more avenues to watch. So saying the show doesn't have great ratings anymore, well, it does. within this wider landscape when everyone's attention is fractured. And with toys, I go into toy shops with my kids quite a lot and get cleaned out. But we went in when Super Mario film came out, for example, and only had a small rack on the shelves and 4 or 5 figures, for me, a massive film. And everything that comes out is a handful of figures, and that's it. And, this is for the prime audience for a lot of this stuff.
Action figures seem to be more an expensive collector's item now rather than something that kids are into. And I know that's sort of the changing nature of, kids have got iPads and interactive televisions and all these other things. But also, you cannot underestimate the loss of Toys R Us and Woolworths in the UK especially, but all across the world, for action figures were mass-produced cheap things that you could buy for $5.99. Now they're $25.99.
Yeah, they are.
And it's the same thing.
That's what the Mario figures were. I mean, I'll be honest, they're really good, these figures. And I thought, damn it, I wish I could have one of them, but, my boy's having it. But I think you're right. So much of it, like look at the Star Wars figures, what is it, the Black Range or something they call it, and the recent Who figures, they're excellent, but they're not playthings.
No.
In it, they're for collectors now, and I think that's great. They're much higher spec than they used to be in things, and a lot of things have changed. And saying, oh, there's no merch for things no one likes anymore, it's not true.
Yeah,
it's just the way it is now.
Absolutely. And but people who are not into a particular franchise for what it's doing at that point, and it's not just Doctor Who, we see it across everything, will always point to various reasons why that is, and none of those things necessarily take into account the facts. But
well, they're easily ignored, aren't they?
You can prove anything with facts.
Yeah.
But we digress, as we often do on this podcast.
Yeah.
Let's jump back to old friends. How do you feel about the portrayal of the fam in this one?
Yeah, I think Yaz probably had the most, to do in this one, because obviously with her background on Earth in the police force, being drawn into a kind of crime and a heist and all of that was not really, kind of the sort of thing she'd normally be up for. So, she had a bit of a difficult time here with it. And Graham and Ryan, they didn't have an enormous amount to do, in terms of a big character arc in it or anything, but they had some nice jokes and banter between them and with the Doctor and stuff, and and again, like I said earlier, I think really spot on captured with their voices and everything. So they were really good fun in it.
Absolutely. And how did you feel about the art? Do you feel like not just the big vistas, but does it capture the likeness as well and all that?
For me, with comic stuff, I like kind of quite clean and smooth lines to the artwork, and Roberta's stuff is really good, but it's a bit kind of sharp and a bit too jagged for me. So it works, because in the past, there's been comics that it's really snobby, but I don't like the art, and I won't read it. And obviously the art is part of why you read these things.
Yeah.
So I do like Roberta's stuff. But there's that shift in, I think, maybe issue 3 when Rachael Stott comes back in on the art, and there's a massive difference in it again. She was the one who kickstarted 13's era and drew some 12th Doctor stuff for Titan.
Yeah.
Brilliant artwork, really kind of curved and comic-y in that style, and fantastic expressions on the face. And so, anyone who's listening, if they go and check it out, they'll see the change. It'd be interesting to hear what people like, because Roberta's done, a lot of stuff for Titan, and it's great. And she does big vistas and all of that, and fantastic aliens. But Rachael Stott stuff for me, spot on.
Yeah.
What about you? What did you think?
I really enjoyed it. I thought sometimes the Jody was a bit off. I thought all the other characters were done really well. And I think it's because Jodie's got quite an expressive face. And sometimes, it can turn a little bit too into caricature.
Yeah.
But in trying to capture all, because, she does a lot with her face in her performance. And so I think in trying to capture that, occasionally it slips too much into parody.
Yeah, I think when you're trying to draw someone that is a real person and that we know, it's obviously, I think it's quite difficult. You've either got to be really good at it, which I think Rachael Stott is, or kind of highly stylize it. And I think Roberta does do that, but there's times when you can sort of see she's trying to hit something, but it doesn't quite get there. And it reminds me a little bit of the Buffy comic series that was done a few years ago, and the artwork on that, you know, you could look at it and go, oh yeah, that's Sarah Michelle Gellar, but it was so kind of cartooned in its style that it was her, but kind of hyped up, and it worked really well for it. So it was different enough to be able to kind of work within a comic, but recognisable enough at the same time. And the artwork on that series was really good. So yeah, Roberta's stuff works great, but I do have a soft spot for Rachael Stott stuff. A Stott spot.
I thought the colours they use are really good, because there's a definite sort of grading they go for, a definite sort of palette that they go for the series on television, and I think it's the right choice for it on TV. But here, I think the colour palette's slightly different, and I really enjoyed there's a lot of, and I suspect, I could be wrong, but I suspect they moved away from using pinks and purples and things like that with Jody on TV, because they're, an old cliche would be they're more feminine colours.
Yes. Yeah,
so
quite
perhaps,
possibly, yeah.
Yeah, so it's possibly like a decision I don't know, but possibly a decision they made to try and sort of get away from that idea of the sort of feminine take on Doctor Who, because
her outfit is not overtly feminine, is it? You know, and you know, it's kind of anyone could wear it, as has been seen at cosplays at conventions and stuff, and you know, the colours on it, you know, there's a lot of vibrancy, but also, you know, it's you know, the sky blue rather than a sort of pink or anything like that. So quite possibly.
So within this comic, there's a lot more pinks and purples and things, especially on the alien worlds. And it's really nice to see her against that splash of colour. Yeah. I really enjoyed that, and I thought that works really well.
And it's a bit different to, I think it's Hidden Human History that comes before this one, which in my recollection of it is quite a bit of a visually darker story. Right. So this is kind of quite a nice change of pace with those visuals, and it being a lot more kind of light-hearted and frothy in its overall story. But if you haven't read Hidden Human Histories, I would absolutely recommend that. That's probably the absolute best of the 13 comic run.
Right.
And one day maybe it'll be turned into a big finish or adapted for TV. It's absolutely brilliant.
Amazing. I will definitely check that out. There are two characters that show up towards the end of this, a Leon Perkins and an Irene.
Oh, yes. Yeah, the time agent type people.
Yes. Have they shown up elsewhere in the run?
Yeah, so they were in the first arc. They're quite prominent in there and dealing with the Hoarder character, so that this appearance at the end here kind of wraps that up a little bit and gives some closure to their character. So, you know, if you read this whole lot in a bit of a run, you know, it does kind of all tie together and has a big series arc across it, which is really nice.
It didn't make it any less accessible for me, but I did have to take a second and sort of go, okay, they must be from something. But you get exactly who they are. And the same with the Hoarder. You go, okay, they've met this person before. This is what it's about. Yeah. But it just took my fan brain to go, okay, this is a continuity. I don't know. But
and I think that's probably the same with a lot of comics these days, you know, that are an ongoing series. You know, you can jump into an arc and kind of largely get it, but you know, there'll be bits you go, I don't understand that. That was 2 arcs ago or something like that. So yeah, there is an element of that in this, but like you said, I don't think it's enough that, you know, you can't get the main action of everything.
Absolutely. Is there anything else you want to say on Old Friends before we move on?
I think just if you haven't read it, check it out and dive into the rest of the run. I don't think you'll regret it, particularly if you're a 13 fan.
Absolutely. So we must rate it. Is it a clanger, a banger, or an average meander?
I'm going to say it's a banger, which will probably surprise no one.
I too will say it's a banger. It was a pleasure to jump into an era of the comic strip that I have not experienced before and enjoy it so much.
Great. That's really good.
Too hot for TV.
So, the next thing we're doing is a Doctor Who audiobook, The Romanov Project, published by BBC Worldwide, written by Niel Bushnell, read by Toby Longworth, released on the 7th of December 2023 on CD and download. News at the time, the Goblin song was announced as appearing in the new Christmas special, and the casting for Ruby's adopted family was announced. So, we're right on the edge of another brave new era. Other releases, and brace yourself, there's quite a few of these. From Big Finish, we had In the Bleak Midwinter, featuring the 8th Doctor, Charlie and Audacity, Torchwood, Oracle, Everywhere and Anywhere, starring the 11th Doctor and Valerie, Revenge of Wormwood, a Sarah Jane spin-off, The Last Day Part 1, featuring the 7th Doctor, The Hoxdeath Time Capsule, featuring the 6th Doctor, and Enemy Mine, featuring the War Doctor. So that was all the big finishes. We're right, just a few on the cusp of the 60th anniversary. Then, of course, we had this, and there was a 12th Doctor story called Cuckoo, The Cuckoo from BBC Audio. And then on television, we had Wild Blue Yonder, The Giggle, and The Church on Ruby Road.
Yeah.
So we're getting right up to date here.
Yeah, nearly up to date. Yeah.
I do like that over the course of the 60th anniversary, the BBC tried to incorporate as many different eras in terms of the other material they were releasing, be it the Tales of the TARDIS or doing a 12th Doctor book, a 13th Doctor book, just things like that just really makes it feel like a cohesive celebration. I know some fans wanted 14 Doctors on television fighting the Davros at no matter what costs, but I'm just happy that if the show's acknowledged in different areas, that all the big eras.
That's a good point. Yeah. Because there was, quite a bit of, ancillary stuff during the year, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Leading up to it. Yeah.
Too hot for TV.
Sylvia Sandstorm reaches the North Pole in a snowcat and switches on a NASA device to make contact with the Nimbus satellite. She suddenly feels as though she is falling and hears angry voices warning about the darkness that feeds. An energy wave at the North Pole confuses the TARDIS's navigational systems, separating the Doctor and Graham from Ryan and Yaz. The Doctor and Graham black out. When they awaken, they find they have materialised in a wasteland which the Doctor deduces was once a seabed. The Doctor and Graham are transported to a dirty building with late 21st century technology, where they meet Sylvia and encounter zombies. The three of them are transported and divided between the same place at different times, meeting the zombies when they were normal people. They discover the Romanov Project, which is a project to supply energy to the Romanov 1 spacecraft and make it capable of interstellar travel. The experiment disrupted time and will now destroy Earth at every point across its history. Pushing the zombie Romanov into a void, which was caused by the time disruption, makes it collapse in on itself. Sylvia then returns to her time, and the Doctor and Graham return to Yaz and Ryan.
Too hot for TV.
So the Romanov Project is, as it stands at the moment, the only 13th Doctor audiobook. Again, a bit of a shame. Because BBC Books but BBC Audio were doing a huge amount at one point. The 10th Doctor had a number of audios. The Tennant read, Catherine Tate did one or two. Some excellent stuff there, like Pest Control and Night of the Troll. And then the 11th Doctor had some absolute bangers as well, which Matt Smith read some of them. And then the 12th Doctor had quite a few. They did something a little bit different there. They were like 4 releases that came every couple of months, and they would tie in to kind of an overall thing. So there'd be a bit of a semi-standalone story, but it would connect into other things. So they did like the Winter series, and then there was a series where he had some other companions with him. that were kind of audio only.
Right.
But they never did any of this for 13, and this is the only one that they did. So like many other 13 fans, kind of lapped it up, with keen anticipation when it came out, and it turned out that it was really good. I mean, you could say we were biased because we were starved of other stuff, but I think genuinely this is a really good one. It kind of starts out one way and turns into something else, doesn't it?
Yeah. On this podcast, people are very used to me slating things if I don't like them, and whether it's a Doctor I love or not. So if I thought either of these were crap, I would be sat here going, well, I love the era, but this is crap. But as with the previous one, I was really glad to experience this because I just thought it was a fantastic new little bit of an era that I am not ready to let go of.
I think that's it. Yeah, it was good, and even if it wasn't, I think there'd have been something to enjoy in it. Like there is with all Doctor Who. I think there's always something to enjoy. But yeah, getting to spend an hour and a bit with 13 and Graham, the spotlight on Graham was really good, and I think this story kind of really played, to him and kind of some of his childhood stuff as well a little bit, and kind of getting to meet someone that he sort of idolised. And the initial story is that is it in the 60s, 70s, and the explorer, what was her name, Sandstrom, she's trying to get to is it the North Pole?
Yeah.
To put some MacGuffin in, I can't remember what, and then snowstorm, and she ends up kind of falling into a crevice in the ground, and there's a Who tradition of a scary voice, saying something over and over, and then to Ryan and Yaz go off to get ice cream, and then the Doctor goes off with Graham, and it kind of hops between now and then, doesn't it? And then they find Sandstrom, and they're in a base underground, aren't they? Base under siege, but it starts turning into a bit of a horror, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it's sort of zombie.
Yeah, bits of zombies, bits of sort of Nassery type stuff, bits of
Cold War paranoia, and
and then bits of just sort of like obviously the sort of North Pole setup. You immediately think of something like Seeds of Doom or something, or The Thing, it's just there's a lot of really good sort of influences just meshed up into this. I mean, the runtime of it is like an hour and 15 minutes. Something
it's not long, is it?
It's not long, but it manages to pack a lot in.
Yeah.
And I think when we start off, you go, oh, it's a jolly little adventure for the 13th Doctor and the fam. But it actually goes quite and it takes a lot for me to be even slightly unnerved by a reading of an audiobook. So I think it does a good job of when it's describing the sort of zombie creatures and stuff like that, and the desolate empty corridors, and going, oh wow, this is quite a creepy, unnerving setup.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I've thought exactly the same. It was sort of you look at the cover and things, and the blurb about it, and you think, oh yeah, this is going to be just a bit of fun Arctic situation, etc. But then it turns into this other thing and ends up being actually genuinely quite creepy, and it does start to sort of hop around a bit, doesn't it, in time periods and things, and starts getting a little bit more kind of not straightforward in that sense. And I'm quite a horror fan as well, and so getting a bit of this that was unexpected was right up my street. So I think that happened quite a bit during 13's era. You sort of think you're going to get one thing at the outset, like with Fugitive of the Jadoon. It was trailered as a Jadoon romp, and it turned out to be, a lore-shattering, escapade, which is brilliant.
Even things like it takes you away, you sort of go, okay, well, it's going to be a sort of cottage under siege in the middle of nowhere, big monster, and it's another universe that's actually a frog, but actually quite a deep look at depression and grief and stuff like that. It's like, it's very good at turning those things on their head. And I think here, like, if you're somebody who perhaps is more into the Stephen Moffat timey-wimey style of telling the story, I think you'll really engage with it. I also think it's a good as you were saying, sort of character examination of Graham. He's still dealing with the grief of the death of his wife, which plays into it. His sort of childhood crushes as well, and his sort of. I just felt like I knew Graham a little better at the end of it.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the script got the voice, and the reading. There was a bit of a accent put on and everything, and it was nice to spend that kind of hour and a bit with Graham and see his relationship with the Doctor, develop a bit more, kind of go into it a bit. And, thinking about it now as we're chatting, it's a bit of a shame they didn't do a kind of Yaz focused one and a Ryan focused one. That would have been a really nice trilogy to have there.
So one of the criticisms that some people have of the Whittaker era is that there's too many people in the TARDIS. So I want to know, A, do you think this is true? And B, do you think they navigate this in the Romanov Project by losing two of them for most of the story?
Yeah, I don't think there's too many people. No, I think probably when Graham and Ryan left was the right time, for me, and a really quite moving, end really was this sort of fam of friendship kind of breaking up, but they went off for very human reasons, I think, not because, they got trapped in a parallel dimension or lost their memory or anything like that. And so quite a departure, again, in that way. One heart happy, one heart sad, the Doctor said, which is such a brilliant line.
Yeah.
And then when Dan joined, he was fantastic, John Bishop. I wasn't expecting him to be as good as he was. So I think probably, when Bradley and Tosin left, it was probably the right time. I think, maybe doing another series with all four of them might have been a bit difficult to kind of give them all enough to do. And sometimes people have criticised, Graham and Ryan don't have much of a story arc in Series 12. And, perhaps it's true, perhaps it's not massive, but I think they reached the end, they reached that culmination of their arc in Series 11. So now we get to see this closer, more loving, relationship between them in Series 12. And that for me is fantastic. I think if you've ever, been in a situation where maybe you didn't get on with your dad for a bit, or, fell out with a brother or something like that, or, any of that kind of thing, to see these two people who were, essentially at loggerheads initially, be drawn together again and end up being able to, love each other, I think was really lovely.
And at that point in Series 12, they're just having fun. And why would you give up that opportunity? They've obviously been through whatever they've been through, dealing with the grief. And obviously we meet Ryan's dad and stuff like that. And the focus becomes a little bit more on Yaz, I think. And obviously going into flux massively so. I always put it like, if you're in a group of friends, if you're with your friends, different people have different good days and bad days and different things going on. And you might just be sat in the pub having a chat. And on this day, person A is a bit quieter than normal and person B is having a really great time in their life and person C is having a shit time. And the times when you're going to be more prominent and less prominent. And so why can't it be like that in drama? They all get something to do every episode.
They do. No one's just standing around. And, the Romanov Project dealt with, putting the focus on Graham very nicely, by getting rid of the other two. I don't think that would have worked on the show, but to sideline two of the actors for an episode, but they all got something to do, even if they weren't, the focus necessarily. I mean, going back to Buffy again, each episode used to be Buffy centric or Willow centric or, whoever. And one of the characters would be more forefront than someone else that episode. And so that is exactly like you're saying, spotlight shifts and, everyone's got their bit to play, but they're not necessarily the priority on the focus.
It's an ensemble show again in the Whittaker era. And I think what the author of this realises is he's got to write a book in an hour and 15 minutes, which, if this was a reading of a book, it'd be 7 hours long.
Yeah.
And so for the purposes of this, he goes, right, I do actually have to sideline these two characters. But as you say, it would be the wrong choice to do it on television.
Yeah. We spoke to Niel on the podcast, who wrote it, and I think he said basically that exact thing. They've only got, he gave us the word count, which he said is, a couple of chapters, of a book normally, and they got cram a whole lot into it, and quite a challenge actually to do it, and I think he did a really good job.
I have to give him credit because he packs in you don't feel like you're missing anything, a whole episode of Doctor Who that is evocative of the era it represents in that time. It's an absolute miracle.
Yeah, it was a great book, yeah. And you mentioned The Cuckoo, which came out a month after this or so, a month before, and was the 12th Doctor audio with Clara, where there's another woman who's a little bit River Song-esque shows up. Clara gets into the TARDIS, and this other woman's been there, staying, and so Clara is obviously immediately put out by this and is jealous. And the Cuckoo is, I think, referring to like kind of basically being a third wheel. And that too was a really good adventure. Really kind of got into Clara and her mindset and her relationship with the Doctor, and this relationship with this other woman that's kind of forced upon her, and how that develops in a sort of unexpected way, I think, really. So yeah, I also would recommend that one. It was a really good book.
Great.
Good audio.
I'll check that out. And the economy of storytelling in any of these is just absolutely fantastic. I want to give a shout out to Toby Longworth's narration, because he's an experienced voice actor, narrator, all these things, and he does a fantastic job. But it's no mean feat to narrate something like this, and your lead character and your main guest character are both female. It's a one-man show, isn't it? Yeah, are both female, and you're most definitely a man with quite a gruff male voice who can do a Graham impression a lot easier than he can adopt. But he still manages, he gets an accent and an impersonation that, again, it's not a send-up, and just manages to convey enough that I go, again, because of the writing as well, that is the 13th Doctor.
That's the voice. Yeah. It's not the voice, like you're saying, but he's given it a really good go, and it's totally working. Yeah, his Graham was really well done, but yeah, kind of a principal cast of two women and a man. He handled it admirably, I think. I think doing something like this is probably, it's probably a bit of a fine line to walk between inadvertently taking the mick out of someone by doing a poor impression of them, or not going far enough in your impression where you're literally just kind of reading it with a bit of accentuation on certain lines or something.
Absolutely. Another thing that I'd like to discuss is the sound design. How did you feel about the sound designer for this?
Yeah, I mean, these, much like Big Finish, they rely so heavily on that, don't they? Yeah. To create the atmosphere and kind of paint a picture in your head. And I suppose in some ways this was limited in its scope, in that it takes place in the Arctic and a snowstorm, and then in an underground kind of bunker thing. So there's not much room for great big wild kind of sonic scapes. So, but what it needed to do, I think it did it really well, and certainly when it goes into that slightly more horror, more creepy element, the sound stuff worked really well to kind of build up that sort of uncomfortable, creepy feeling.
There's a good sparse use of sound effects, sparse use of score that is more evocative than sort of, much like Sega Nakanola's music, it's not always the big bombastic Murray Gold thing. Yeah. It's a little bit more subdued and sort of underlaying the tension or the emotion rather than telling you about it. It's
has echoes of classic Who's kind of electronic music, I think, and is creating a sort of ambience and a feeling, rather than kind of big music, bombastic stuff. And then when Akinola's stuff does flare up into life, it does it wonderfully. And I like that there's this, distinct difference between it all, and, you're not being kind of musically told what to feel and think by it.
And I must say, it had been a while since I'd heard the theme tune, and every time it's just an absolute belter of a song, and I love that version so much.
Yeah, with the recent Fugitive Doctor audio, hearing the Whittaker theme starting up on the Big Finish, brilliant. Yeah,
I'm surprised actually they didn't go for their own like new version of the theme for the Fugitive Doctor, but
yeah, I thought they might have done, but I suppose as it was the first release from the era, they've kept it on brand. But hoping they'll do more with her. I know there's another set July, but nothing else announced yet. But maybe she'll develop into her own range and have her own theme variation.
Well, let's hope so.
Mm.
Is there much more you'd like to say on the Romanov Project?
No, I really enjoyed it. And again, I think if you're a 13 fan, it's worth checking it out. But if you like kind of base Under Siege stuff and horror-esque Who, it's worth checking out as well. So yeah. Don't sleep on this one. It is really good.
Yeah, in fact, I would say if you're somebody that isn't a fan of the era but want to explore the extended universe of it, I think this is a really solid Doctor Who story that a lot of people will find things to enjoy in there.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend it to 13th Doctor fans and others.
And others, other Whovians,
Maybe not the Not My Doctor crowd, but
they'll find something to not enjoy.
So we must rate it. Is it a clanger, a banger, or an average meander?
Well, again, it will probably not surprise you to say that it's a banger. So yeah, that's
Excellent.
where I'd go. Yeah.
A banger for me too.
Good.
Too hot for TV.
Well, look, Geoff, thank you so much for joining me today on this trip through the 13th Doctor spin-offs.
Well, thank you for asking me. It's just been a lot of fun.
And you are welcome back any time to talk about the 13th Doctor or any other you want to talk about.
Yeah, I'd be up for that. I really like the sort of different, focus you put on the wider world of the show here. I think it's quite unique and quite different. So yeah.
Thank you very much. And if people want to find you on the internet and listen to your podcast, where can they find you?
Well, on Twitter or X, we are at WhoC2C, and we're over on Blue Sky as well now, same thing, and Facebook. But the podcast is called Who Corner to Corner, I should say. And our main website is whoc2c.buzzsprout.com. So that's where you can go to find all of our episodes. But yeah, we're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Blue Sky. We're everywhere you'd expect to be, really.
And just in case anybody hasn't heard, it's a wonderful podcast, but perhaps you want to share a little bit more about, you've had some amazing guests on there. So just give everybody a quick little, maybe some of the highlights.
Okay. Well, we release a podcast episode every week, and we review episodes, books, audios. We talk to other fans of the show, find out about their love for the show and where that all started. But we've been very lucky to have a lot of guest interviews as well, from book authors through to people like Sophie Aldred, Colin Baker, Craig Ailes, who played Carvanista, Kevin McNally, who played Professor Jericho, and some guy called Chris Chibnall that you might have heard of as well. So yeah, does a bit of writing, might get somewhere one day. But yeah, we've been really lucky with that sort of thing as well. Oh, and sometimes we do audio dramas as well. In absence of any other 13th Doctor audios, we decided we'd do some. So we've done a bit of that as well.
And now Big Finish is stepping on your toes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So maybe they'll phone up and say, "Do you want to write one day?" But, yeah, okay. But yeah, so we do that sometimes as well. So we try and do a varied output. And we cover, there's a lot of 13th Doctor stuff, but, we cover all eras of the show. We did a 6th Doctor celebration recently, looked at a bunch of that. We've got some 3rd Doctor stuff that we're planning at the moment as well. And we did a series about Clara and the 12th Doctor a little while ago as well. So yeah, we try and cover all of it, really. So
amazing.
It's good fun.
Everybody go and hunt that down. Next time, I'll be joined by John Isles, and we'll be looking at 3 Nick Briggs penned stories. First up, it's the audio-visuals play Conglomerate, where he also plays the Doctor. Then, it's the Stranger video in Memory Alone. And finally, it's the Nowhere Place, a Big Finish story featuring the 6th Doctor and Evelyn. But until next time, I've been Dylan.
I've been Geoff.
And this has been Doctor Who, Too Hot for TV.
Happen TV.
I had a look around at what was available, and the first thing we decided to cover was Old Friends, which came from Titan Comics and was released on the 4th of December 2019, written by Jody Houser with art by Roberta Ingranata.
Yep.
And colorist is Enrique Erin. I should have read these names before and practiced them, shouldn't I?
I'm going to let you have the go.
Angeloni, I'm going to say.